And hello, I'm your host, Sensei Pong. And no, I'm not at E3. I ain't got the time or money for that. But I do care. And since there's already a bunch of coverage on it, as it is on the major players, I thought I'd give you my personal top picks for the 3DS from what I've seen floating around on YouTube, Twitch, and the internet waves. I also cover some of the bottom dregs that seem, full of disappointment and broken dreams. And mind you, these are my personal opinions, not fact. Now, I'm only going to go into maybe a little bit of speculation on what I think some of these games are going to be like, but no real theories here, just what seems to be good and bad. So let's begin. First up, what caught my eye after the first game that caught my eye is, of course, one of the major players in the ring, Monster Hunter Generations. I'm sure if you're already a fan of the series, you already knew about this one and expect it to be good. But for those new to the series, I think this game may be a good kickstart into this series. I'm not really sure, as it seems to expand quite a bit on the gameplay features and opens up some new stuff like class selection, probably also fixes some problems with the older ones. And, oh my gosh, it's a cat, people. It's adorable. I'm sold. Whatever. Pounce into action. 9 lives. Oh, that's cute. Alright, okay. I'll be honest here. I've never played any of the Monster Hunter games. I have seen reviews, watched some Let's Play footage here and there, and it's probably a game I'd really enjoy myself. And vaguely knowing the past titles to some casual degree, this one actually seems to be pretty good. Everything a Monster Hunter fan would probably want and more is probably going to be in this. So keep an eye on it, should be good. It releases July 15 of this year, which is actually a nice segue into the first game that caught my eye, River City Tokyo Rumble. Now call me a dork all you want, but River City Ransom's a classic beat 'em up, and for some kind of probably 30th anniversary celebration, Tokyo Rumble will be released into the States. It's adding new moves, storyline, stuff, whatever, I don't know. If you're a fan of beat 'em ups, it's probably worth keeping an eye on. My only issue is this elephant in the room, and that's, it's a Natsume title. This can mean anything, but, personally, I would like to think it would be hard to mess this one up, but I have been wrong in the past, and, my trust has been tarnished with Lost Valley. XSeed's where it's at for all you Harvest Moon fans, in my personal opinion, as of recent. There was some sort of business debacle with Marvelous, Natsume, and XSeed, and now unfortunately Harvest Moon as a series is a hit-miss franchise. On the flip side, if XSeed makes another Rune Factory and continues their Story of Seasons series for years to come, it's not that bad. And I know what y'all are gonna say. Go play Stardew Valley, or at least wait for the episodic Wild Season thing. I know. But maybe I want to play on a handheld. You ever think of that? Playing my handheld while regretting eating so much Taco Bell as I struggle with my life choices sitting on the loo. Graphic, I know. But you know what? At my age, it's a real first world problem. But back on track, River City Tokyo Rumble has caught my attention. I'm really hoping it's everything it says it is and more. If it is, it should be awesome. It's due for release later this year, and I've been craving an old school beat 'em up. I'm excited to see where this one goes. But thinking of Natsume, I suppose one game that should at least be mentioned is Harvest Moon's Skytree Villiage. Artistically, and what I've seen of gameplay looks eerily similar to Lost Valley, a soulless Minecraft without the fun. Only difference here is that there's actual people permanently living in that void. That's good, I think, yeah. I think they learned their lesson on that one, but you know what, frankly, the terrain manipulation in blocky 3D only works so far with some things. Because it looks so similar to Lost Valley, this is one of those games that should be put on the back burner for any Harvest Moon fan. Wait for the player and critic reviews. I don't trust it. Any hype train that may have existed for this is rusted and in a ditch lying next to a bootleg Thomas the Tank Engine. Sir Topham Hatt is not amused. But with that possible broken dream swept under the rug, it's good to mention Story of Seasons Trio of Towns. Now, the first Story of Seasons was pretty good for being a spiritual successor from the XSeed team being involved. XSeed in the past has normally made good games that cater to what the fan base wants and more, for the most part, which is nice. It's scheduled to release in 2017, so, we've still got a bit of time before we can play. But for all you Harvest Moon Stardew Valley fans out there, if you're looking for a handheld version of what you might enjoy, keep an eye out for Story of Season Trio of Towns. It could actually be really good. Now onto the RPG scene and the plethora of Dragon Quest titles that are being squeezed out of Squeenix's wonderful fingers. Ugh, that sounded a lot funnier in my head. But we've got remakes of DQ7 and 8 and the new Dragon Quest XI, scheduled to be released on October 26th of this year. Everything I've seen of all three of these look pretty good. I'm excited for Dragon Quest XI personally, not being a remake, but if you're not familiar with the series, picking up the remakes 7 and 8 is probably something you'd enjoy if you enjoy JRPGs and the like. I might pick them up myself so I can introduce them to my plethora of children. But keep an eye out for Dragon Quest XI. I reckon this one's gonna be good. But thinking of RPGs, a few other titles make my list of notables. First with the announcement of the American release of Yokai Watch 2, a double release of Bony Spirits and Fleshy Souls. Now I'm not familiar with the series, I've never played it. My kids have played the crap out of the demo, and I probably should get my hands on a copy of the game. But I might have to wait because Yokai 2 is supposed to be way better than the first one, according to the Japanese audiences, of course. And with the feature of catching them all and trading the different yokai mod between games and improved gameplay and mini games, it actually looks pretty awesome. Of course, in the vein of these sorts of games, they've added more Digikai so you can ranch and befriend on your team. This game actually looks pretty promising, and knowing that there's already a huge number of fans in the States that stand by the franchise, this is probably one of those games that's safe to pre-order without really knowing what you're getting. Should be pretty fun at least. Another RPG to keep track of is the next installment of the Shin Megami Tensei franchise by Atlus, with Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse. It's scheduled to release in the third quarter of this year and will probably be gritty and epic. It's Atlus. It's Shin Megami. It's probably going to be pretty good. No, definitely not for the kids, but you know what, it's going to be good. It's an easy choice to put on my list. Enough said. And finally, a somewhat newcomer to the West is 7th Dragon 3, Code VIII by Sega, the first overseas release of 7th Dragon in the franchise. Apparently, it already had a small following here in the States with a fan translation floating around for the first game. But, from what I've seen, I'm actually quite interested. It looks pretty good. And you know what, for the most part, say what you may about Sega sitting on their IPs and twiddling their thumbs, their RPGs are usually pretty good. Valkyria, Phantasy Star, Shenmue, just to name a few new and old. It's really just a matter if they get up and actually make one. Hopefully not outsourcing it to a mediocre developer, but you know, whatever. So something I'm not familiar with that sold well in Japan is pretty good news to me overall. Maybe if I just go in expecting a decent RPG and not really overhype myself, it should turn out to be a pretty good experience. But if you were wondering, from what I gathered, the premise is pretty simple. Post-apocalyptic alternative universe where the Earth has been taken over by dragons. Take back the land and fight dragons. Yeah, that's simple. That's cool. I like it. So if you're a fan of JRPGs and want something new, 7th Dragon 3 Code VIII is probably something you might want to keep track of. But thinking about Sega, a segue into another disappointment is the coming of, well, Sonic Boom Fire and Ice. The sequel I'm sure everyone was hoping for. I don't know. I don't have a joke for this one. I'm just kind of saddened. But to stay on the downhill ride to sadness, I took a look at Metroid Prime Federation Force, trailer, gameplay, and... I'm not really sure if this game is going to be really bad, but you know, it kind of looks like Jet Force Gemini and Galador on the Game Boy Advance had a baby and then it inbred for about 5 generations and somehow turned into a first-person shooter. Okay, I'm not saying this game is bad, but it looks shallow and slow. If it's any fun at all, I'll assume it's still going to get pretty bad feedback and hate either way from both players and critics, since, well, they're probably going to go in looking for a Metroid game, but it's clearly not. It's a co-op shooter with a seemingly kid-friendly skin. I don't know. If you really want a Metroid game, wait for the next one, or just do a quick search on Steam for a well-rated Metroidvania-styled game you're not familiar with. I recommend Wings of V or Unepic, but that's on PC. I'm trying to concentrate on a system no one's really covering here, so. But if you do want multiplayer, I suppose you can go play Overwatch or something. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about Overwatch. It's pretty good, but coverage on the game may be overdone. Yeah. Either way, Sonic Boom Fire and Ice, if you're curious, is set to release September 27th, 2016, and Metroid Prime Federation Force is set to release August 19th of 2016. With all those likely bums, let's bring this hype train to a complete stop and talk a second about Mighty Number 9. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna personally wait for Mighty Number 9 if you haven't actually put money into it. I haven't, so I have the liberty and freedom to do that, but if you haven't yet, don't do it, because what I'm gonna do is actually just wait for it to release to see what people really think of it, because it's kind of hard to tell what the final product is gonna actually be like. But you know what, I'm hopeful, but that's only because I'm a huge Mega Man fan, but I'm hopeful. It could just be bad marketing or whatever, but you know what, I'd wait a little bit to see what happens. If it's a surprise like Doom, then you know what, that's awesome. But if it's a surprise like Sonic Boom, okay, look, go on Steam, look up 20XX. It's still in early access, but it's had plenty of upgrades and updates since its initial release, and you know that's always a good thing. Because let's face it, we ain't gonna get another Mega Man game, because Capcom ain't doing Buffett. And finally, a couple quick mentions more include Rhythm Heaven Megamix, which released on June 15th in the States, and scheduled to release later this year for both Europe and Australia. It's a great rhythm game series that has a lot of weird Japanese flavored rhythm games. It's apparently going to include over 100 minigames from past installments, and will include an unreleased Japanese-only title that appeared on the Game Boy Advance. It's gotten favorable scores from Famitsu, and knowing a little bit about the franchise, it should be good fun for wacky casual play. Probably a great title for the DS. Fun for all ages, easy pick up and play, that sort of thing. So if you enjoy rhythm games, pick it up. Should have a good amount of content to keep a person occupied for a good while. Either way, expect a full review from me if I ever get a copy. Another decent game to consider if you like platformers is Runbow. It's coming to the 3DS as Runbow Pocket or something like that. It implements an interesting mechanic of changing the color to the levels that make certain platforms appear and disappear, etc. This should be interesting if you like those sorts of games. And finally, and definitely not least, for any fan of the franchise, Phoenix Wright, Spirit of Justice is set to release in the States and Europe for the Nintendo eShop in September of this year, just in time for the holidays, and about on schedule for another Ace game. Play the role of a lawyer in a broken system in an exotic land, defending justice and law. Okay, so it should be interesting to say the least, as in this installment, you're not in your usual courtrooms. Phoenix finds himself in a foreign land with a completely different judicial system based off mysticism and seances, with no jury or lawyers present. I'm interested. It's a twist on the formula and probably worth a look if you're a fan of the series. Oh yeah, by the way, thinking about 3DS titles to keep an eye out for this year. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I found some information on a leak about a new Pokémon game set to release on November 18th, if my sources are correct. Current popular theories include it being an expansion on the X and Y generation, but not Pokémon Z as previously thought. Generation 6.5, what it's being called, is probably going to be called something along the lines of Pokémon Joule or Pokémon Pakis, with a third release being called Pokémon Nibiru, which will probably be an improvement on the formula with closer plot lines to the anime, featuring battles with, Jesse and James. Also, other leaks include evidence showing that it'll probably take place in a region south of Kalos, resembling the geographical nuances of Singapore. It's pretty cool stuff. And if you're a fan of the Pokemon series like myself, you may have already heard news on these games and know that there really isn't anything on YouTube or anywhere else on the internet covering these press releases, leaks, or theories. It doesn't seem like there's any hype for it at all. Like, don't even bother looking around. Don't do a Google search. No one's covering it but me. Trust me, I'm the sensei. Either way, to wrap this up, what are my personal top 5 picks for E3 on the 3DS? At number 5, River City Tokyo Rumble. As a fan of classic beat-em-ups, this actually looks like a pretty promising game, but I probably would have put Rhythm Heaven here on the list, but it's already in stores, and so, you know what, just go look up reviews and Let's Plays to see what you think. I'll do that myself after this video is up. I'll probably be a chump and get both. Number 4, Yokai Watch, Bony Spirits and Fleshy Souls. You know, it looks great, great reviews from the Japanese sources, and you know what? It looks like to be an improvement on the first game. It's probably going to be good, and I'm probably going to pick it up. Probably both. I might pick up both Bony Spirits and Fleshy Souls. Who knows? Number 3. Okay, so this one is a tie between Dragon Quest XI and Monster Hunter Generations. I know I'm cheating by putting 2 games on one level here, but you know what? It's my channel. Get over it. I do this thing all the time. But you know what? They both look good, and I want them. You know, okay, so that joke's getting old. But you know what? I'll probably still do it for years to come. Number 2. Okay, so I've got Story of Seasons Trio of Towns. It's an XSeed title, and it's probably an expansion on the first Story of Season, just to be great for all the Harvest Moon fans out there. And since I love Harvest Moon and the Rune Factory games like pretty much no other, I'm excited to see this one on the shelves and hope for the best. I'll probably pick up a copy no matter what, even if it gets pretty cold reviews. Number 1, 7th Dragon 3, Code VFD. So, I personally always like new IP. It's a JRPG with a simple premise. You know what? My interest is high for this one. I'll give it a shot. Fighting dragons is cool. But, you know, it should be mentioned that this list probably would have been a little bit different and things would have been bumped out of order if the new Pokemon Jules and Pokemon Pakis were actually verified. But you know what? They're not. They would have easily made my number 1 pick if they were, because I do like Pokemon games. They're usually pretty solid. I haven't seen anything on YouTube about them, so you know what? It seems like there's no real hype and only vague rumors floating around. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content, and tell me what your picks are for E3 on the 3DS, or, you know, whatever platform. PS Vita. The list of good titles of this year are huge, and I figured it'd be a lot easier to concentrate on a platform that's not really getting any coverage outside of Pokemon. So, yeah, the Pokemon game that takes place in Singapore. Until next time, Punk signing out. Like and subscribe. Number 4, Yokoi Watch, the koi pond simulator. Yes, with bony spirits and fleshy souls. Don't let your fish become bony spirits or fleshy souls, because that means you lost, because your koi are dead. Yokoi Watch. Collect them all.